Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. How are you, students? Hope you have learned the previous lesson that was about the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and the working model of the nervous system. References and resources, grade 8th books in general science, chapter 1, page 7 to 9. These are the three videos. One is about the voluntary and involuntary action. Second one is about the reflex action, and the third one is about the system. Methodology, educational video, YouTube links, 3 links have given. Flowcharts, types of the nervous actions, diagrams of the reflex action and excretory system. Homework assignment, worksheet. Objectives. At the end of the lesson, you will be able to differentiate between voluntary and involuntary action. Number 2, explain reflex action with an example. Number 3, define excretion. Number 4, draw and label human excretory system. Number 5, explain kidneys and associated structures. Brainstorming. Name the 2 divisions of the nervous system. You have done the 2 divisions of the nervous system. One is, yes, name them, central nervous system, and second one, peripheral nervous system. Good. Then the second is define a stimulus. What is a stimulus? Think about that. Yes, any change in the environment, external or internal, that can be detected by a receptor to initiate a nerve impulse is called the stimulus. What is the function of the peripheral nervous system, PNS? Yes, what is the function? Tell me. Yes, the peripheral nervous system connect all the body parts to the central nervous system, that is brain and spinal cord. Okay, look at this. Central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, peripheral nervous system, cranial nerves and spinal nerves. Function of this is to connect all the body parts with the central nervous system. 2 types of this, involuntary nervous system and the voluntary nervous system. Yes, the first topic we will do today is voluntary actions and involuntary actions. These are the 2 types of nervous actions. Voluntary actions involve skeletal muscles. Example, raising your hand to answer a question that you normally do in the class. And the involuntary action involves skeletal muscles. Example, knee jerk. Involves smooth muscles, cardiac muscles or gland, that is your normal blood pressure, your heartbeat. These are all the involuntary actions. Voluntary action and involuntary action. The peripheral nervous system has 2 main functions. First one, it transmits signals to the central nervous system for processing. Okay. Second one is, when the processing will be done, then what will happen? It transmits responses from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. Clear? The 2 functions are, first is transmitting the signals to the central nervous system. Then what will happen in the central nervous system? Processing. Then it will transmit the responses from the central nervous system to the rest of the body. Voluntary actions such as walking or talking are under conscious control. Involuntary action that involves skeletal muscles allows immediate reaction that does not require conscious effort. Clear? Voluntary, these are under our control, conscious control, and involuntary, those are the immediate reaction that does not require the conscious effort. For example, if a finger touch a hot stove, the reaction is to pull the finger immediately without having to think about it. In such circumstance, when the responses to stimuli are involuntary, they are called reflexes. The nerve pathway involved in a reflex action is called a reflex arc. The effectors involved in involuntary actions are smooth muscles and cardiac muscles. Okay. Involuntary actions and the voluntary action. Involuntary, these includes actions which are not our control, like breathing, reflexes. Voluntary action is under our control, like snapping our fingers, raising a hand when the question was asked, talking, eating, reading, running, all are the voluntary actions. Cardiac muscles are involved, are involuntary muscles. They contract without our knowing. And in the voluntary action, our hand muscles are voluntary muscles. They act according to the impulses given by our brain. Voluntary actions requires thinking, and while involuntary action takes place without thinking. Voluntary are slower one, involuntary are faster one. Voluntary are controlled mainly by the brain. Involuntary are controlled mainly by the spinal cord. For every action, the voluntary action, because we have to think about that and then we have to perform, then that all those are the voluntary action. Involuntary, usually life-saving action in which we don't have to think, we will abruptly do that thing without thinking. So those are the involuntary action. Examples of responses: voluntary action, eating a cake, riding a bicycle, walking, playing up the piano, coming to school. These are all voluntary action which we do according to our will. Though these are under our control. Involuntary action, your heartbeat, breathing, blinking, removing hand from heart, object, choking, and salivation, right? All these are the involuntary action. Clear? In which we don't have to think about that, abruptly do that. Reflex action, second topic, right? First was about voluntary, involuntary actions. Okay, now the reflex action is a sudden, unconscious and involuntary response of the effectors to a stimulus. That is, we suddenly withdraw our hand if we suddenly touch a hot object. In this reflex action, the nerve is the skin receptor which detects the heat. Okay, the first thing is the detection of the heat. Through what? Through the receptor. Then what will happen? And passes the message through the sensory nerves. Then when the skin will receive, then what will happen? Sensory nerves will move. They will command that message to the spinal cord. Okay, this message will be sent by the sensory nerves to the spinal cord. Then the information passes through the motor nerves to the muscles effectors on the hand, and we withdraw our hand. Clear? So in this case, first through the receptor, sensory nerves will move to the spinal cord. Then the information passes. That message will be interpreted in the spinal cord and through the motor nerves, the muscles. Let's look at this. Reflex arc. Receptors, heat, pain, receptors in the skin, sensory neuron, message is going to the spinal cord. Here the relay neuron, that is the interneurons interpreting of that message, and then message will through the motor neurons, the response will be there. Effectors, those are the muscles in the gland, they will respond to that stimulus. This one is the whole passage of then through the stimulus, receptor organ, spinal cord, then the effector organ, response, and finally we will withdraw our hand. First step, arrival of the stimulus and activation of receptors. Second, activation of sensory neuron. Then in the spinal cord, then what will happen? Information processing in the central nervous system, activation of the motor neuron, and finally the effectors will respond. Okay. How the muscles will stretch? Stretching of the muscle stimulates muscle spindle. Then activation of the sensory neuron. These sensory neurons, the message will go to the spinal cord. Information processing through the motor neuron. The contraction of the muscles occur. All this is the reflex action. Then the third and the last topic is excretory system. Excretion. Waste products in the body include nitrogenous material and other salts. Accumulation of the waste material in the body is dangerous. So what should be done? If these substances, these nitrogenous waste substances, these salts, they will accumulate in the body, they should be removed, right? Excuse me. And therefore must be removed from the body. The removal of the nitrogenous waste material from the body is called excretion. Those waste substances that will be there in the body, they should be removed. Then is the excretory system. Nitrogenous materials, extra water and salts are removed by the excretory system. Skin. Some extra salts are also removed through the skin during perspiration. So its skin is also acting as an excretory organ. Okay. The kidney is an excretory organ or regulatory organ. The main purpose of the kidney is to separate urea, mineral salts, toxin and other waste products from the blood. They also do the job of conserving water, salts and electrolytes. So regulatory organ also, excretory organ and the regulatory. At least one kidney must function properly for life to be maintained. The human kidney. Now look at this. About the kidneys, the bean-shaped, these are the bean-shaped reddish brown organs, these are the kidneys. Clear? About the size of your fist, second thing. Third is ectomyous, 10 to 12 centimeter long. Concave site having a depression where a renal artery arises. Look at this depression. This one is. So where a renal artery enters and the renal vein and the ureter exit the kidney. This one is the ureter. This one, okay? And this one is the ureter. These ureters, they finally come to the bladder. The renal cortex, the renal medulla and the renal pelvis are the major regions of the kidney. Three major regions of the kidney. What are those three major regions? This one is the cortex, then medulla and then the pelvis. The left kidney is slightly above the right kidney. You can see here the left kidney is slightly high above the right kidney. Okay. Kidneys and their structures. Two types of renal arteries and the renal veins. In your book, the diagram is drawn of these and only on the diagram is written the word the renal arteries and the renal veins. In the artery, the blood, it will be written, and in the vein, not the description of that, detailed description of that is given. But simply look at this. The renal artery transport oxygenated blood from the heart. This one. Okay. And aorta to kidneys for nutrition and cellular respiration. Okay. When you will observe the diagram, you should know why these two are. So I have written here. The renal artery, it transports the oxygenated blood. Then that oxygenated blood will come from where? It will come from the heart and the aorta to the kidneys. Why it will come? For the nutrition and cellular respiration. Then are the renal veins. They transport the filtered deoxygenated blood from the kidney to the posterior vena cava and finally to the heart. So when you will observe the two renal arteries and the renal veins, you should know their function. Okay. This one is the renal cortex. Okay. We have done the three main parts of the kidneys. One is the cortex, other is the medulla, and third one is pelvis. Clear? We have done these three parts. Look at this. This one is the outer part, this light pink. This one is cortex. Right? Here I have written the renal cortex. Clear? Then this part is known as the medulla. This one is the renal medulla. When the word renal is used, that means that is concerned with your kidneys. Okay. So this the outer part, renal cortex, then renal medulla, then this one is the renal pelvis. Clear? The three parts of the kidneys. Yes, tell me. One is renal cortex. Okay. Second one, renal medulla. Okay. The third one is renal pelvis. Good. The outer layer granulated of the kidney that contains most of the nephrons. These are the nephrons, right? This part is known as the renal cortex. Then the renal medulla contain renal pyramids. Look at this. These are the pyramids. These are present where? In the renal medulla. Good. Contains renal pelvis and the renal pelvis and the part of the nephron. This one is the renal pelvis and the part of the nephron. Site for salt, water and urea absorption. Renal pelvis cavity which lies in the center of the kidneys and which extend to the ureters. This cavity collects urine from all the calyces in the kidneys. So renal cortex, then renal medulla, then renal pelvis. Then are the ureters. Look at this. We have done only about these kidneys, right? Then from them, which thing arise? These are the ureters. Tubes that transport urine from the renal pelvis, this renal pelvis, to the bladder. Then urinary bladder, hollow, expanded muscular organs located in the pelvic girdle. This one is the bladder. Function as temporary reservoir for the urine, right? The three things are there: kidneys, ureter, and then the urinary bladder. In the kidney, we have done the three structure: renal cortex, renal medulla, renal pelvis. And then the blood will come through these ureters. Clear? In the kidney, three parts. Which one? Cortex, medulla, pelvis. Then through the ureters, the urine will come where? Into the bladder. And finally out the urethra. Look at this. Kidneys. Then from the kidneys, ureter arise. Then the urinary bladder, and then through the urethra, urine will be formed through these ureters, and finally it will collected in the bladder, and then through the urethra it will be moved out. Urine consists of water, urea, and other dissolved waste, and some excess nutrients. So up to this is clear. Very first thing we have done, that was about the very first question which we have done, that is about the voluntary and involuntary action. Clear? We have done those actions, we have done their examples. The second thing was the reflex action, in which we have done how this reflex action occurs, where the message goes to, how messages goes to the spinal cord, and then the response comes. The third thing was the excretory system. In the excretory system, we have done only about the kidneys and all that. The basic thing, the structural unit of that is the nephron, which will be learned in the next lesson. Clear? The structure of the kidney we have done. This one is the structure. Then in the kidney, the three parts of the kidneys: renal cortex, renal medulla, renal pelvis. Then the urine will be formed. It will move through the ureter into the urinary bladder. Here it will be stored, and then through the urethra it will be out of the body. The urinary system is clear. Now what is present here? These are the nephrons. We will discuss them in the next lesson, the detailed structure of the nephrons, how the nephrons work, how they filter the blood, how the urine will be formed. All that will be discussed in the next lesson. Up to this we have done. Hope you have understood the lesson. Hope you have learned all about this kidney. Okay, so I have given the links. Watch the videos. Those are about all the three topics. The three videos are having all the three aspects which we have discussed today. Solve the worksheet. Thank you. Good luck. Allah Hafiz.